You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Good morning, it's April 28th, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News here at paceradio.net and 420pace.ca. How you doing, Cindy?
Good morning, Al.
And how are we today?
Excited. And how are you?
I'm doing good. I got to see my grandchildren over the weekend. And you?
Yes. Well, I got to see my grandson. It was his birthday yesterday, so the family got together to celebrate him, which is always exciting. But I leave for Amsterdam in 2 days, so I'm just about bursting right now.
Amsterdam, 2 days.
In 2 days.
Wow. And so what are you going to do there? I bet you're not going to smoke any cannabis.
No, not at all. No, I actually, I'm going on a coffee shop tour. 2 of them. One is virtual and one is LED. I'm going to go see the tulips, some cheese making and the windmills. And I'm staying right in the middle of the red light district. So I'll walk out my door and have like any number of cannabis cafes, like right there. I'm just like,
right. And like, this is just something that's been bang, bang, bang. It wasn't something
It's something that I've been wanting to do since I was like 14, 15 years old. As anybody in the cannabis world, has wanted, to do this trip. We've all aspired to go to these cafes. So I, something amazing happened for me here a couple of weeks ago, and I decided to take myself on a trip to celebrate. And
cool.
Off I went. Found out like the tulip season is happening at the beginning of May. Well, it's been happening for the last month, and so I decided to make it happen right away so I could hit tulip season.
Yeah, and there you go. You check something off the bucket list.
It's going to be awesome.
Go to Amsterdam, right? All righty. What do you say we get started with the news?
Sounds great.
All right, here we go. First story's up.
Coming to us from Marijuana Moment, areas with higher veteran populations have more medical cannabis doctors, federally funded study shows.
All right, a newly published study funded in part by the National Institute on Drug Abuse examines county-level data about medical cannabis patients and clinicians in 7 U.S. states, focusing mostly on demographic trends. One finding, for example, suggests a strong association between military veteran populations and higher rates of medical cannabis authorization clinics. Authors wrote that many reflect veterans' efforts to expand medical cannabis access and higher prevalence of qualifying conditions for medical cannabis licensures among veterans. For example, chronic pain or post-traumatic stress disorder, or as we like to say, injury.
The report was published on Thursday in the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, Network Open. It was authored by a 5-person team from the University of Michigan Medical School, National Center for Injury Prevention, and control of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as the Oak Ridge Institute for Science and Education in Tennessee. Researchers analyzed 2022 data on medical cannabis patients and authorizing clinicians from 262 countries across across 7 states: Delaware, Maine, Minnesota, New Hampshire, New York, Utah, and West Virginia. Comparing that data with the county level demographic information on factors like income, race, ethnicity, as well as percentages of veterans and people unemployed and uninsured living in poverty and disabled.
Overall, there were an average of 75.3 medical cannabis patients per 10,000 residents, meaning registered patients in those states made up about 0.8% of the population. There were also 1.4 authorization clinicians per 10,000 residents on average. There were bigger rates of patient registration in counties with higher incomes as well as those with higher uninsured rates. There were comparatively lower medical cannabis patient rates in counties with higher populations of people from minority racial and ethnic groups, as well as communities with higher unemployment.
As far as the presence of clinicians able to recommend medical cannabis, meanwhile, concentrations were higher in counties with greater median household incomes, as well as those with more military veterans. Clinicians were scarcer in counties with high unemployment percentages and areas with high male to female population ratios. Well, that's interesting. Some factors aligned between patient and clinician models, such as higher county level household income and lower unemployment, authors noted. However, future research is needed to understand discrepancies between models, such as associations between uninsurance percentage and medical cannabis patient rate, as well as between social vulnerability and authorizing clinician rate.
Future studies, the team's report says, will also help more accurately target appropriate substance use resources and education related to cannabis in communities with the most need. Other research published this week in JAMA Network Open, meanwhile, found that while the frequency of cannabis use among adults in Canada increased slightly in the years following nationwide legalization, problematic misuse of cannabis, in fact, saw modest decreases.
Fundamentally, authors of the study wrote, these results do not suggest increased adverse outcomes for adults who were actively using cannabis before legalization. From a public health standpoint, these results are mixed, they added, as increased use might be considered harmful, while decreased misuse is a positive outcome.
Governments and public health experts have been working to track consumer behavior as laws around cannabis continue to change. In the U.S., a Centers for Disease Control and Prevention report recently broke down federal data on cannabis use among thousands of U.S. adults, finding that while smoking cannabis remains the most common way to consume it, methods such as eating, vaping, and dabbing are growing in popularity. Overall, in 2022, 15.3% of the adults reported current cannabis use, while 7.9% reported daily use. Among users, almost 79% reported smoking, followed by eating at 41%, vaping at 30%, and dabbing at 14%.
Wow. About half of all adults who use cannabis, which is about 46.7%, reported multiple methods of use, most typically smoking and eating or smoking and vaping. Rates of both vaping and dabbing, as well as cannabis used in general, were higher in youth adults than the general adult population.
An earlier analysis from CDC found that rates of current and lifetime cannabis use among high school students have continued to drop amid the legalization movement. Another recent federal report published by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration found that consumption among minors, defined as people between the age of 12 and 20 years of age, have fallen slightly in the past year, despite methodological changes that make comparisons over time difficult. It also suggests that youth use has fallen significantly in the past decade.
A separate poll recently found that more Americans smoke cannabis on a daily basis than drink alcohol every day, and that alcohol drinkers are more likely to say they would benefit from limiting their use than cannabis consumers are. U.S. adults who drink alcohol are nearly 3 times as likely to say they'd be better off reducing their intake of the drug compared to cannabis consumers who said they'd benefit from using their preferred substance less often, the survey found. Further, it found that while lifetime and monthly alcohol drinking among adults was far more common than cannabis use, daily cannabis consumption was slightly more popular than daily drinking.
All right, I'm going to shut that story down only because we've pretty well covered everything from that to deal with what the main point is, and then that's the headline, and they're going into all these different studies. So, yeah, we'll move on. I'm getting a lot of jumpy going on that screen as well. So. Yeah. Well, it happens. It happens. All right, we'll move on to the next story, and we've got it set and ready to go.
Okay, coming to us from Green State, the government's new plan for pot, rescheduling out, regulation in.
Federal cannabis reform has been hanging in the balance over the last 2 years. An effort to move the plant from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 was paused indefinitely as administrations changed. Legislation meant to ease banking restrictions for legal operators was left on the table. On the campaign trail, President Trump indicated support for change, and now new congressional cannabis bills are taking a new approach to pot policy. Earlier this month, the state's 2.0 Act was reintroduced in the House of Representatives. The bill would leave cannabis reform up to individual states. Ooh, I don't like that, but effectively ending federal prohibition from those that legalize medical and or adult use pot. It would remove many of the barriers to success for state compliant operators, but would not actually fully legalize cannabis nationwide. And that's why I say boo. President Trump had previously advocated for this type of legislation.
Republican Representative Dave Joyce of Ohio co-sponsored the bill. He's also the co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus. As it turns out, the state's 2.0 Act wasn't his only push for pot reform that day. Representative Joyce, along with House Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries of New York, reintroduced the Preparing Regulators Effectively for a Post-Prohibition Adult Use Regulated Environment Act, PREPARE. The bill creates a path for government officials to develop cannabis policy when the plant is inevitably legalized on the federal level.
The PREPARE Act recommends that cannabis be regulated like alcohol and calls for the establishment of a commission on the federal regulation. Federal regulation of cannabis. This commission would analyze the current laws around alcohol in order to apply them to cannabis. It would also study the impact of prohibition, particularly among minorities and other groups unfairly targeted during criminalization. Currently, nearly all 50 states have legalized or enacted cannabis to some degree, bringing us closer to the inevitable end to federal cannabis prohibition, says Congressman Joyce in a press release. With this legislation, Congress would be equipped to develop a much-needed federal regulatory framework that not only respects the unique needs, rights, and laws of each state, but also ensures a responsible end to prohibition and safer future for our communities.
Both bills previously stalled in the House, but with bipartisan support for cannabis reform at an all-time high, 2025 could be the year the legalization finally passes. Meanwhile, trade groups representing the alcohol industry are also pushing for pot to be regulated like beer and wine. The unified calls could inspire the federal government to finally push forward.
Yeah, the alcohol people want to be the people who are serving it. I've seen that in another article.
Yeah, that and like all of the infused drinks and whatnot, like they want to corner the market. I get that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on to the next article, and I got her all lined up, and let's go.
Okie dokie. Coming to us from neurosciencenews.com. Psychedelic sparks long-term brain plasticity.
They have a summary here, and they say a single dose of psychedelic compound 25C2-NBOH significantly improved cognitive flexibility in mice with effects lasting up to 3 weeks post-treatment. And it says that treated mice adapted more quickly in rule switching tasks, indicating enhanced neuroplasticity in the prefrontal cortex. The findings suggest psychedelics may offer lasting cognitive benefits with potential applications for treating depression, PTSD, and neurodegenerative diseases. Both male and female mice benefited, and the study's advanced testing system may accelerate future research into targeting psychedelic therapies.
Interesting. Some of the key facts were long-lasting effects. One dose of this particular psychedelic improved learning adaptability for up to 20 days. Brain flexibility. Mice showed enhanced performance on reversal learning tasks, and broad potential effects were observed in both sexes, with implications for treating cognitive disorders. In groundbreaking research, the University of Michigan researchers have discovered that a single dose of a psychedelic compound can enhance cognitive flexibility, the brain's ability to adapt to changing circumstances, for weeks after the administration, potentially revolutionizing treatments for depression and other neurodegenerative diseases.
Now, the study published today in the Journal of Psychedelics demonstrated that mice treated with a single dose of this 25CN NBOH, a selective serotonin 2A receptor agonist, showed remarkably improved performance in reversal learning tasks compared to control groups when tested 2 to 3 weeks after treatment. And they say key findings says that what makes this discovery particularly significant is the sustained duration of cognitive benefits following just one psychedelic dose, explains Professor Omar J. Hamid, senior corresponding author from the University of Michigan's Department of Psychology.
He said, we observed enhanced learning adaptability that persisted for weeks, suggesting these compounds may induce lasting and behavioral meaningful neuroplasticity changes in the prefrontal cortex. Using an innovative automatic sequential learning I can't even say the word for today for whatever reason. Researchers measured how effectively mice could adapt to rule reversals, a standard test for cognitive flexibility.
Oh, I expect tongue twisters every show. The psychedelic treated mice demonstrated superior adaptability compared to saline controls, with enhanced task efficiency, higher percentages of controlled trials or correct trials, and increased reward acquisition during the reversal phase. Now, the results complement existing cellular research showing psychedelic-induced structural remodeling in the prefrontal cortex, but uniquely demonstrate sustained cognitive benefits persisting long after the immediate effects of the medicine has dissipated.
An interest in psychedelic medicine continues to grow. This research raises intriguing questions about how psychedelics might reshape neural pathways governing flexible thinking. Could these compounds potentially reopen critical periods of brain plasticity? What molecular mechanisms underlie these long-lasting cognitive improvements? How might the timing and frequency of administration affect long-term neuroplasticity?
Yeah, the current study focused on the long-term effects of a single psychedelic dose. The key question is what happens with 2 or 3 or even 20 doses taken over several months? Good question. Is every additional dose increasingly beneficial for flexible learning, or is there a plateau effect or even a negative effect of too many doses? These are important questions to answer next in the quest to make psychedelic medicine more rational and mechanistic, according to Dr. Hamid.
Importantly, the study found that both male and female mice showed significant improvements in cognitive flexibility, suggesting the potential broad applicability of psychedelic therapy across biological sexes. The most striking aspect of our findings is that these cognitive benefits were measured 15 to 20 days after a single psychedelic administration. And this comes from Elizabeth Browns, who is the first author of the study.
Yeah, it says that this suggests that a single dose of a psychedelic isn't just temporarily altering perception, but potentially inducing lasting beneficial changes in brain function. Now, the study's automated beneficial task represents a significant methodology advance of evaluating flexible learning, enabling researchers to do all this stuff. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's they're finding new stuff all the time.
Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's things are really, really moving along when it comes to psychedelics and all that as far as their benefits to people. So
yeah, well, I mean, research after research, they keep finding that things benefit. Like, I mean, we knew about some of them. Some of them have been around for a millennia, but it's nice to see the proof continuing to pop up.
Correct. Exactly. All righty. On to our next story, and this is the last one before we go to break, and it's up.
Coming to us from International Cannabis Business Conference, hemp lime building blocks could revolutionize construction.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Humans have used the hemp plant for thousands of years, with the first evidence of human use dating back to 8,000 BCE in modern-day Taiwan, where archaeologists found pottery remains containing hemp cord. Humans have also used hemp as a source of medicine since at least 2800 BC, with the hemp plant being listed in the Chinese Emperor Xinyang's pharmacopoeia. These days, hemp is still used for fiber and making various textiles, and is a source for medical products on a level never witnessed before in human history. However, hemp is also used for a wide array of other things, including bioremediation, to clean up toxic sites around the world, for creating batteries, and to create the building material hempcrete.
Mm-hmm. The latter of those, hempcrete, is a biocompostable made of the inner woody core of the hemp plant mixed with a lime-based binder. The inner woody core, or the shiv, is high in silica content, and that allows it to naturally bind really well with lime. It is a property that is seemingly unique to hemp among all of the known natural fibers. Currently, hempcrete is primarily used as an insulating and fill-in material. It weighs about 1/7 or 1/8 of the weight of concrete, floats in water when fully cured, has a negative CO2 footprint, and is nearly fireproof, at least compared to other popular building materials. One limitation of hempcrete is that it is not used as a structural element because it is not a load-bearing material.
Recently on Time for Hemp, we had a guest on there, and her name was Shauna Dunbar, and they built a house out of as much hemp product as they could. Wow. And it's pretty interesting. So you have to check it out. All right. Okay, there we go. They say that the latter of these, hempcrete, is a biocomposite made of inner woody core of the hemp plant mixed with lime. Yeah, you already read that. Currently, hempcrete is primarily used as an insulating and filling material.
I read that.
You read that too, eh?
Yeah,
the limitation of hemp as a source of low-bearing construction material could soon become a thing of the past, with the Cologne University of Applied Sciences reportedly having developed new hemp lime building blocks potentially capable of being used as a material for load-bearing structures. These zones, like conventional hemp limestone blocks, are to be composed exclusively of biomass and mineral binders. According to the project participants, the aim is to create a climate-positive alternative to aerated concrete blocks or lightweight vertically perforated bricks, enabling single-shell masonry construction with rapidly renewable raw materials, reported Al-Jamin in its local newspaper coverage.
Mm-hmm. The Institute for Construction and Agricultural Machinery Technology at the University of Applied Sciences is reportedly developing a device that will be designed to produce compacted bricks made of hemp on a large scale. The resulting bricks will undergo testing to further explore their efficacy and application feasibility. In the second half of our project, we will devote ourselves to practical tests with our masonry blocks. We will erect several wall modules and examine their structural properties. In addition to properties such as load-bearing capacity, thermal insulation, and moisture behavior, we want to determine which materials, such as plaster and mortar, are compatible with the blocks and demonstrate that the blocks can be easily processed using conventional tools. And this is said by project leader, Professor Arnie Kusler from the Faculty of the Agricultural of the University of Applied Sciences, according to them.
Yeah. If the project's research can prove that hemp-lined building blocks can be used as a load-bearing construction material, it would revolutionize the construction industry. Producing hemp is exponentially more sustainable compared to the production of most traditional construction materials. Cement production, for example, is a significant source of pollution around the globe.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Hemp blocks. Hope they can get that. I was thinking that Shauna's house, her basement foundation was done with hemp blocks.
Wow.
So yeah. I know that they used it. They used it within the building of the house. So
yeah,
can't remember exactly where all she said that they used it, but yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. All right, time for us to take a break. We'll be right back. And just so you know, here you go. You get to hear the people who help us, get our voices out. You're watching the Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. See you in about 2.5.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. Open Monday to Friday from 10 till 7 p.m. or by chance. Check out our flags, our t-shirts, plus our hats. And look of that supply of rolling papers, plus much more. We've got bongs and your favorite herbal vaporizers. Look at all the incense we have, as well as for those who collect knives, check out these knives in our collection. And while you're here, stop in to see Shay at the piercing room, where you can get poked by Shay. Daily deals, check them out. Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford, Ontario.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, They offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. Rerolled Saturdays. Check it out. Nothing but non-stop cannabis and psychedelic programming. Find it at 420pace.ca.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Psychedelics and cannabis educational news. Cindy, we got 4 more stories to cover. We're going to be going to Australia. We're going to go to Austria. And we're going to be talking about some psychedelics as well as our next story. Insurance for cannabis patients.
Yeah. Coming to us from Marijuana Moment. Insurance companies are not required to cover medical cannabis, federal judge rules.
A federal court in New Mexico has dismissed a lawsuit from a medical cannabis operator and patients, ruling that health plans from Blue Cross and Blue Shield of New Mexico aren't required to pay for cannabis to treat behavioral health conditions. Judge Martha Vanquiz of the U.S. District Court of the District of New Mexico wrote in her decision on Wednesday that state law does not require insurance to cover medical cannabis. And if it did, she added, such a requirement would be preempted by federal law.
Plaintiffs in the case New Mexico Top Organics versus Blue Cross and Blue Shield of New Mexico sought a ruling that medical cannabis should be fully covered by health insurance, both for individuals with Medicaid insurance and for individuals who have private insurance, according to Vasquez's decision. Pardon me. They argued that the aggregated effect of New Mexico statutes, including the state's medical cannabis law and a state tax law prohibiting insurers from imposing cost sharing on behavioral health services, created an obligation to cover patients' medication. In response to defendants' arguments, the federal law would preempt such coverage. Plaintiffs said cannabis was likely to soon be rescheduled from 1 to 3 under the Federal Controlled Substances Act, and noted an existing federal budget rider prohibits the Department of Justice from interfering with state legal medical cannabis programs.
Vasquez wrote that her decision is not intended to weigh in on the medical benefits of cannabis, even accepting as true for the sake of argument that cannabis does have medical value. The decision says state law still does not compel defendants to provide coverage for it. State law, she pointed out, includes some behavioral health treatments that are explicitly covered and some that are explicitly not covered.
Tellingly, cannabis does not seem to be included in either category. Her ruling continues, the fact that medical cannabis is not explicitly covered in the state's benchmark plan signifies that state law does not mandate coverage of it, despite legislative sponsors of an earlier New Mexico insurance bill being quoted in a news article saying that the change would include coverage of medical cannabis. Vasquez wrote, the language of the statute does not do so, and this court is bound by the plain meaning of the statute, not an article discussing the statute.
Even if the state law clearly compelled insurers to cover cannabis, the judge continued defendants would not be able to comply with both federal and state law. And under federal law, the possession of cannabis is a criminal offense. So you understand why I say, hey, you got to legalize it countrywide, not just statewide. While the federal judge acknowledged that some state courts in New Mexico have ruled that medical cannabis should be covered under workers' compensation law, the ruling states that federal judges in the state have not agreed with that reasoning.
Like other federal courts, it says, this court is not bound by the decisions of the New Mexico Court of Appeals. As for other federal trial court rulings that involve insurance coverage of cannabis, Vasquez called them persuasive rather than controlling cases.
They illustrate that federal courts are grappling with the conflicting and somewhat uncertain legal landscape of cannabis regulations at the state and federal level. The court finds that New Mexico state law does not compel insurance coverage for medical cannabis, and that even if it did, such a law or laws would be preempted by federal law, under which cannabis as a Schedule I drug is deemed illegal and not medically useful. For these reasons alone, the court must dismiss the First Amendment complaint and need not consider the remainder of the defendant's arguments in favor of dismissal.
Lead plaintiff in the case, New Mexico Top Organics, also known as Ultra Health, sent a letter in February of 22 to insurance companies and state agencies about the new insurance law. In it, the company argued that the law, which eliminated cost sharing and out-of-pocket costs for behavioral health services and all medications associated with the treatment of mental illness, substance abuse disorders, and trauma spectrum disorders, should be interpreted to include medical cannabis for the nearly 73,000 New Mexicans who are registered patients for related qualifying conditions. It filed suit in June of that year.
Separately, in New Mexico, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham earlier this month signed a bill into law to establish a therapeutic psilocybin program in the state. The Medical Psilocybin Act will allow patients with certain qualifying conditions to access a psychedelic and use it under the guidance of a licensed healthcare provider.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it switches over. It keeps going. It's a long article, as most marijuana moment stories are. But insurance companies not compelled. Federal law, right? Federal law. That's all they got to say. Then they're covered under the federal end of things, right? So that's one of the reasons why you hear me chime in when I say, hey, you got to go state. You got to go countrywide, not just state law.
Not just state law.
Yeah, exactly. There's many other reasons, but that's the one we're pointing on today. But other than that, I think it's time for us to move on to our next story. Here we go.
Coming to us from International Cannabis Business Conference, Australian study finds medical cannabis use improves sleep.
All right. I've always think I've known that. To some people, insomnia may not seem like a serious health condition. However, anyone who suffers from major insomnia will be the first to point out that it can have a negative and significant impact on a person's life with their overall well-being. The Mayo Clinic defines insomnia as a common sleep disorder that can make it hard to fall asleep, hard to stay asleep, or cause you to wake up too early and not be able to get back to sleep. Chronic insomnia occurs when the sleep conditions last longer than a month.
In addition to making a person feel tired and drained through the day, insomnia can also be an indicator of a person experiencing one or more other potentially serious health conditions. A team of researchers affiliated with the University of Sydney recently conducted a study that found that after 1 year of medical cannabis use, subjects experienced improved sleep. The results of the study were published in the academic database PLOS1 earlier this month.
Yeah, it says here, according to the researchers, they stated that we aimed to assess overall health-related quality of life, pain, fatigue, sleep, anxiety, depression, and motor function in a large real-world sample for patients prescribed medical cannabis. We previously found all patient-reported outcomes improved in the first 3 months of hypothesized that improvements would be maintained to 12 months, the researchers stated. The Quest Innovation multi-center prospective study recruited adult patients with any chronic health condition newly prescribed medicinal cannabis oil between November 2020 and December 2021. Participants identified by 114 clinicians around Australia completed validated questionnaires at baseline and 2 weeks titration and 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 12 months follow-ups, the researchers stated after the study's methodology.
Statistically significant and clinical meaningful improvements in overall health-related quality of life, fatigue, and sleep disturbance were maintained over 12 months in patients prescribed medical cannabis for chronic health conditions. Anxiety, depression, insomnia, and pain also improved over time for those with corresponding health conditions, the researchers concluded.
There you go. Always, say you need more studies. You need more studies. So, every time we can find a study to get out there, it's always nice to share them. So, and talking about sharing studies, let's continue that theme with our next story.
Okie dokie. Coming to us from SciTech Daily, psilocybin and MDMA may silence fear at its roots, study finds.
Researchers at Mass General Brigham discovered that interactions between human immune cells and brain cells play a key role in triggering fear responses. However, treatments with psychedelics such as MDMA and psilocybin may help reverse these effects. Now, they say that in their new study, they found that immune activity can alter communication between brain cells, influencing stress and fear-related behaviors. Importantly, the team demonstrated that psychedelic compounds such as MDMA and psilocybin can reverse these neuroimmune changes and reduce stress-induced fear responses in preclinical models. Similar effects were observed in human tissue samples. The findings were published in Nature.
Our study underscores how psychedelics can do more than just change perception. They can help dial down inflammation and reset the brain immune interactions, said corresponding author Michael Wheeler, who is a PhD of the Jean Lay Institute of Immunology and Inflammation, as well as the Anne Romney Center for Neurologic Diseases at Brigham and Women's Hospital. He is also a founding member of the Mass General Brigham Health System. He says this could reshape how we think about treatment for inflammatory disorders and conditions like anxiety and depression. Prior research has shown immune signaling can drive the development of neuropsychiatric diseases such as major depressive disorder. However, the ways that specific immune mechanisms can also affect behaviors due to chronic stress or MDD remained unclear.
Using a mouse model of chronic stress, the researchers determined that increased crosstalk between cells in the amygdala or the brain's fear center boosted fear behaviors, elevated inflammatory signaling, and activated fear-promoting amygdala neurons.
Yeah. Furthermore,
go ahead. Furthermore, go ahead. Furthermore, inflammatory immune cells called monocytes migrated from other parts of the body in the brain meninges during chronic stress. The research team demonstrated that artificially manipulating these cells impacted fear behaviors. Treating stressed mice with psilocybin and MDMA prevented monocytes from accumulating in the brain and lowered fear behaviors.
The investigators found similar signals of response to stress in human brain cells and in gene expression data sets from patients with MDD, suggesting that the same interactions between the immune system and the brain may play a role in neuropsychiatric disorders in humans. The authors note that further experiments are needed to understand exactly how psychedelics affect immune cells and brain communication. Next steps include examining the long-term effects of psychedelic treatment on patients with MDD or inflammatory diseases. Wheeler is currently collaborating with investigators from the Massachusetts General Hospital Center for Neuroscience of Psychedelics on a clinical trial of patients with depression who are being treated with psychedelics and will examine their tissue samples.
We're not saying that psychedelics are a cure-all for inflammatory diseases or any other health condition, but we do see evidence that psychedelics have some tissue-specific benefits, and that learning more about them could open up entirely new possibilities of or for treatments. You know, I have Crohn's. It's immune. They talk about stress. It could be one of the major symptoms of Crohn's. It's an inflammatory disease. It's not a neuro end of things that I'm aware of, but hey, maybe there's something there that could help people with Crohn's and colitis.
Maybe.
Who knows? If it helps with inflammatory diseases, which that is, who knows? As they say, we need more research.
More research.
Alrighty, on to our last story of the day. Here we go.
Coming to us from the International Cannabis Business Conference, Austria's CBD flower ban faces legal challenges.
All right, as it should. Months after it was reportedly determined that dried hemp flowers in Austria with the THC content of up to 0.3% are subject to the country's tobacco tax and monopoly, the nation's government is facing ongoing legal challenges from cannabis industry members. Now, according to, I'll just read it off. The Australian cannabis industry is breathing a sigh of relief after the publication of a constitutional opinion by leading jurist Dr. Heinz Mayer. According to Mayer, the sale of CBD cannabis with less than 0.3% THC is not subject to the tobacco monopoly, despite early reports from the Ministry of Finance. This would allow CBD shops to legally resume the sale of smokable cannabis products, reported the cannabis industries in its original coverage.
Mayer argues that the ruling of the highest administrative court only confirms that CBD cannabis falls under tobacco excise duty, not under the monopoly itself. According to him, an extension of the tobacco monopoly to cannabis would be in conflict with the Austrian's constitution and European law, the outlet also reported. According to a previous analysis by the Tax Foundation, Austria places a euro of 3.32, €3.32 excise duty per 20 pack of tobacco cigarettes. An additional value-added tax, or VAT, is also placed on tobacco products, raising the total tax per pack of tobacco cigarettes to €4.23. The Tax Foundation estimates that tax as a share of the final selling price per pack of tobacco cigarettes is 77%.
Wow, 77% of the price of tobacco. Oh, wow. That's a lot of tax. Regulators across Europe and many other parts of the world are struggling to rectify the inconsistencies in laws and regulations on consumable hemp products. For many years, hemp products were largely limited to textiles. However, many savvy entrepreneurs are bringing more consumable hemp products to emerging markets, often referred to as cannabis light, and policymakers are scrambling to try to catch up. According to the Australian government, sales of cannabis light products must extensively go through the official tobacco shops, as long as the sales ban remains in force. Vending machine sales are also prohibited, according to the Australian government.
Wow.
Yeah, so there you go. I know that they're calling them cannabis light. In the U.S., they seem to call it intoxicating hemp products. What can I say? That's what they say. That's what I noticed from doing these news articles.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So you're off to Amsterdam.
Yes, on Wednesday in 2 days. I am off to Amsterdam, so I'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, all right. So you're going to be missing the next 3 shows.
The next 3 shows, yeah.
All right. I'll see if Glenn is available. See if he can join me. If not, I tried started years ago. Yeah, it's right. All right. And who knows? Maybe we'll hear from you while you're in Amsterdam.
You never know.
Yeah, you never know. All right. Anything else?
Listen, have a great couple of weeks.
All right, I will. And you as well. Send lots of pictures. Lots of
I
pictures.
will.
All right, and I'll report on them. How's that? All right, that's our news report for today. Thanks to our buds at the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, Limestone City Hydroponics, and At-Eze.ca. In closing, I'd like to say thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. And plus, don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more. We've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at Pace Radio.